On a November evening in 1987, Tony Brown was returning home from his job as a civil servant for his local council in Warwickshire, England, to an unusual scene. His house was being raided by the police. Little did he know that the police were there trawling through his house and his personal belongings looking for something even more unusual. Gay porn? He'd been targeted by the then-titled Police Obscene Publication Squad as part of Operation Spanner, a nationwide effort by law enforcement to put a stop to same-sex sadomasochism, which is the SM in BDSM in case you didn't know. And boy did they strike gold when they came across a very raunchy videotape in Tony's home. Unbeknownst to them, they had uncovered an OG sex tape, but instead of turning Tony into an 80s-style Kardashian, it was used to throw him in jail and let all of England know, in no uncertain terms, what the country's predominantly old straight male judges thought about sexual consent. The tape depicted everything you might expect from a homemade BDSM clip: hooks, chains, bruises, cuts, brandings, okay, I didn't expect that last one, on a notoriously gnarly scene of a man nailing his foreskin to a wooden board. To the police, it was checkmate. They found proof of what they'd been looking for, that there's devilry at work among them, their gays that must be stopped. I can only imagine they thought they'd found the gays equivalent of the videotape from The Ring, where anyone who watched it to the end would have 7 days left of being straight before Elton John called and they had to go homo. The police seized that videotape and used it as a critical piece of evidence in cases brought against Tony and 15 other gay men who were forced to wait 2 years for trial and weren't even allowed to know the nature of the charges against them during that time. During the wait, Tony lived with the constant fear of the case becoming public and destroying his family and career, not to mention the thought of something as personal as a sex tape hitting the mainstream media outlets with an open invitation to judge its content. But in spite of the toxic publicity and nationwide discussions that would blow up when the case eventually became public, Tony's friends and family showed exceptional character and supported him through his ordeal, something I'm sure we would all want those closest to us to do if our intimate secrets were ever put under the microscope. Fast forward in 2 years to 1989, and the 16 men caught in Operation Spanner's Net had their day in court. The prosecutor's argument was basically that these men had inflicted injuries on each other that looked like the kinds of injuries that people could end up in jail over. Their defence was that everyone involved asked for it, considered to it, had the power to stop it, and didn't need to go to hospital anyway, so it didn't matter. The judge basically said, yeah, no, not on my watch. And this message was reaffirmed to the appeal courts in England until gaining the final seal of approval in the House of Lords, the UK's then obnoxiously titled equivalent to the Supreme Court in the US. With the opinions of the appellate judges in the UK now carved in stone, the sentences were here to stay. Tony was sentenced to 2 years and 9 months in prison, and the sentences of others ranged from a £1,000 fine, which is worth over £2,000 in today's value, to over 4 years behind bars. The trial judge was particularly hard on Tony, giving him 1 year for watching a man being branded and another year for aiding and abetting a spanking. And I know what you're thinking, yes, that last one is pretty bodacious. Most of the men involved were not as lucky as Tony and didn't have a strong network of support around them, hence their lives were at best derailed and at worst ruined by the humiliation inflicted on them by tabloids. For anyone unaware, the UK has a long-standing issue of bloodhound media outlets that operate on a "it's not harassment if you put a question mark after it" modus operandi. It may help boost your faith in humanity, however, to learn that Tony and his cohort received support not just from prison officers but also from other inmates at Brixton Prison. Apparently nobody at the prison really knew why the men were there, and by Tony's account it seems that he was treated better by convicted criminals than he was by vast swaths of the British public. Tony and 2 others later decided to challenge their treatment in the European Court of Human Rights on the basis that their right to privacy had been breached by the UK government, you know, since everyone was probably now referring to him as Tony the sadomasochist. However, this attempt fell flat on its face as the European Court of Human Rights basically refused to go near the issue with a barge pole and said it was for individual countries to sort out messes like this. Actions taken over 30 years ago are easy targets for today's moral lens, and most people will agree that the actions of the police at the time were, at least in part, driven by institutional homophobia. However, beneath the surface, there is a key question to be asked. How much damage are you actually allowed to consent to before somebody has to step in? Fingernail torture, limb removal. Most countries criminalise assisted suicide, so that's a popular line in the sand in the West at least, but what do you think? Let me know in the comments below.